From caged showers to people asleep next to feces, more disturbing images from Rikers Jail in New York are coming to light in shocking pictures obtained by Gothamist. People not yet convicted of any crimes shown living overcrowded in their own waste. Another shocking indictment of conditions at the famed, infamous New York jail complex.
So awful. Here to discuss further is movement lawyer and political commentator Olayemi Olurin. Welcome, Olayemi.
Good morning. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. These images are horrific. I was so glad that you highlighted them on a very viral Twitter thread, which is great to see this getting the attention it deserves. How did we get here? Talk us through that.
We've been trying to draw attention to this crisis for years now, and I wish I could say in the answer to how we got here that this is the first time we're seeing photos like this, but it's not. Just last year, we had horrific photos come out of the conditions inside Rikers, and nonetheless, they continue to fight bail reform. They continue to put more and more people in Rikers, and right now, Rikers was supposed to be on track to close by the year 2026. They were supposed to agree, de Blasio had agreed to the plan to close Rikers, and that was a plan that Eric Adams said that he co-signed as well, and it was supposed to be trying to decarcerate Rikers and get it down to 3,300 people. Rikers is a facility built to hold 3,000 people only, and right now they have 5,000 Black and brown New Yorkers that have not been convicted of a trial being incarcerated there, and that's why you see the conditions you see, with people piled on top of each other with no space, with people being held in shower stalls, people losing their lives, people contracting illness. This is not new, unfortunately. It's great that the photos have come out, and it helps strengthen the arguments of the proponents who are trying to show us that this facility needs to be closed. We need to stop using cash bail to weaponize it against poor people. But unfortunately, this is not new. Rikers has long been declared a human rights crisis, especially since 2020 when the pandemic reached catastrophic heights inside of the jail. There's really no other way to describe it. So this has been a long time coming. Last year, there were 16 deaths in Rikers, which was the highest death toll since 2013. We're not completed the year yet, and we're already at 15 deaths. So we're well on track to be past the amount of deaths we had last year. This is horrific.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to note, as you just did, that these are by and large people who have not yet, they're awaiting trial. They've not yet even been convicted of crimes, which is not to say that, people convicted of crimes suddenly deserve miserable conditions or anything like that. But this can happen. You could find yourself in this place, in this hell, without ever having actually done anything wrong, or let alone having been subjected yet to due process. And what are the ways? It's not, and it's also not like, well, you're in for a weekend or something and then you're going to be out. Like, what are the wait times for people stuck in Rikers like these days?
Years. People can spend years in Rikers. I know one of the most famous stories that really moves people's heart is Khalif Browder, who spent years there when he was 16 and accused of stealing a backpack he didn't steal, which eventually, even upon release, the long-lasting psychological effects of that eventually led to him taking his life. So people spend years in Rikers, years waiting on a trial. And what often happens is most things in the criminal system don't go to trial. Most things in the criminal system don't end in a conviction. What actually happens is they use, by being able to set cash bail on people and send them to Rikers, because of the horrific conditions, people want to get out, then they do plead to a crime, then they do take a conviction just so that they can be released from this horrific place. Or what happens in the few people that will eventually get their trial, you spend years and years sitting in Rikers, and by the time you have your trial, even if you beat the trial, even if you're found not guilty, you've already experienced all the effects of incarceration and what that does to your life in a permanent way. So this is just people are in an unimaginable situation, and the system is deliberately being set up that way because that's how it works. They can't take everything to trial. This is how you coerce people into plea deals.
Yeah, the story of Khalif Browder was just horrific. And I remember when he took his life, and that there was this sense of this has to be the last time that this happens. This man was accused of a nonviolent offense, and then 3 years later, it turns out that the person who, was accusing him wasn't even in the country anymore. It was just a totally horrific crime. But I guess I would ask, why isn't it the case that a judge, somebody is accused of something and the judge makes a decision based on whether they're likely to reoffend, what kind of a physical threat they pose to the community? I mean, why is that not the standard for determining whether or not somebody is released to wait trial outside jail?
Oh, I mean, why it's not is a question about what our criminal system is actually here to do and maintain. But the reality is the bail system has nothing to do with public safety. The actual legal standard for whether or not bail is set on somebody is whether or not they'll return to court. That's the legal standard. Whether or not you're a danger to public safety, whether or not you've been convicted, none of that is actually what we're analyzing, because at arraignments, you haven't been convicted of a crime. No evidence is presented against you. What happens is someone makes an accusation against you, they bring charges, they arrest you, and then you're arraigned. They don't have to present anything at all, even if actually more often than you can possibly imagine, the person that they're calling the victim is sitting in the audience saying, no, I did not want this person arrested. I am not going to go along with this case. I don't want this person prosecuted. Please stop, please stop. And the court says, noted. And they set bail and they issue orders of protection in spite of what this person is saying, even though they know they won't be able to prosecute it. The prosecutors know on a later date, they will have to dismiss this case. They won't be able to take it to trial. Instead, they still exercise their ability to set bail on these people and create these kind of conditions.
So would you support setting bail based on a question of whether somebody is likely to reoffend, whether they do present a threat to the community, or do you think nobody should be held prior to trial?
I would say the cash bail system is always in place to weaponize it against poor people. If we do have components, there are places without cash bail systems. Like New Jersey entirely got rid of its cash bail system in 2014 under Republican Governor Christie. It doesn't mean that no one gets detained pre-trial. What it means is if we have actual evidence, if the prosecutor is able to present some evidence that you are a danger to public safety, or if you are a flight risk, or they have some reason to believe that this crime is so dangerous that you can't be out pre-trial, what they will do is they will just detain you, but they don't create a monetary reality, because this is how it works. If you're poor and someone sets cash bail on you, you will just never be able to get out. It doesn't matter how it works, right? But if someone is rich, if somebody does have means, no matter how dangerous they are or whatever else standard you say, they can always purchase their freedom. So getting rid of a cash bail system takes that out of it. So people can still be detained. You can still detain people if they're a danger to people, but instead of making it a money thing where only poor people suffer in these circumstances, we have that.
Well, right. I think that sounds like actually maybe a great compromise between people who are worried about public safety and people who don't want the laws or the rules weaponized against the poor. Because as you said, I think that would make sense to a lot of people, that if there's a danger, you're detained or you're prevented from leaving. And based on, again, there needs to be due process. So if you've already been convicted once, if there's already overwhelming evidence or video evidence or that you've been convicted, that you are a danger to people on the street or maybe to your spouse or to your family or something like that, maybe the presumption then could be that we can't just let you go, rather than it being like, well, how much likely are you to show up, can you afford whatever. Right. That would seem like a more logical way to do it.
Yeah, and it lends legitimacy to the things we already believe, right? If we have a presumption of innocence in our criminal system, we want to believe if I'm accused of a crime, I'm innocent until proven guilty. But a cash bail system takes that away from us. If we say, oh, you're innocent until proven guilty, but I'm going to send you to jail anyway, regardless, you're going to sit in jail because you don't have this amount of money, are you really innocent until proven guilty? But if we have a system that says, okay, prosecutors, when they arraign you on charges, if they can present actual evidence, they have some substantive reasons that they present to the judge for why this person is being incarcerated, that not only lends legitimacy to the presumptions that we already believe in, but it also provides some kind of cover for the judge and the prosecutors, so that they can't say, people aren't so easily able to say you have the system in place where you're just weaponizing against poor people, you're just accusing poor people of crimes and throwing them in jail and getting rid of the key. Instead, it says, no, we at least had some kind of standard. There's a reason why we're holding this person. It isn't just that we live in a city like New York City where we have 9 million people, but yet 90% of the people that are incarcerated at Rikers are Black and brown. So I think it's a good system. And you actually see Chicago getting ready to do that in January 2023 with the Pretrial Fairness Act. They're going to do that. They're going to get rid of mostly cash bail, but still have a system in place where judges and prosecutors can have a standard for detaining people if there is a public safety element.
I take so much the point that you're making about the presumption of innocence, which is like literally, so much of our civilization is based on that and should be based on that. At the same time, there has been a big increase in violent crimes, in, homicides, although that's now coming down, thank God. Rape is still up, carjacking, armed robbery, all of these are still up, some from before the pre-pandemic lows. And it does seem like there is this sort of wave going through New York, when I talk to police officers, they often tell me that a lot of this crime has to do with the feeling that prosecutors won't keep people incarcerated, that they are releasing people back onto the streets. So help me understand that, Olayemi, from your point of view, where does this crime wave fit into this? I mean, obviously those photos are inexcusable. When somebody is, in the custody of the state, I mean, it's absolutely unacceptable for them to be treated in that way. There is the presumption of innocence. I totally agree with you and respect the work that you do so much. But help me understand the role of this crime wave in what we're seeing here.
So studies have actually already come out repeatedly. There have been numerous studies that already show that bail reform is not linked to a rise in crime. Listen, when we say we have crime, there's a reason. We have to actually explore the conditions that create crime and where we're living. We live in New York City, and since 2020 to now, New York City's cost of living has raised exponentially. We have an average of about over $4,000 in rent to live here in this city. We have eviction moratoriums being lifted. We have a homeless crisis. We have all kinds of issues that substantively affect why we have crime, right? So that is not this complete confusion as to how we're getting there. But when it comes to bail reform, the average person that is let out while their case is pending, they're not being rearrested. That's just simply statistically not what is happening here. The rise in crime is not linked to people being released on bail. But more importantly, like I said, bail has nothing to do with a public safety element in the first place, right? If we were having a conversation with this idea that crime is all happening because people are being released or they're not being held, not only does it fly in the face of everything else we said in the system about our system, or presumption of innocence and all these different things, but it's simply not true. I think a study actually just was released yesterday that of the 11,000 people that were released during the pandemic because of, remember when they released people because of the pandemic issues in the jails, maybe about 17 were rearrested for some kind of violent crime. Those numbers are staggeringly in the favor of bail reform. So unfortunately, that's not true. Also, I want to address something I think is important: to stop taking police officers' narratives as fact. Of course, police are going to always tell you, yeah, we're not in favor of these reforms because it takes money out of their pocket. We give over $10.6 billion is given in NYPD. We give over $860 million to the corrections officers. When we made budget cuts all throughout this year, we still gave $200 million more to NYPD in between Rikers. They have an actual money incentive to continue fear-mongering and convince people that these systems need to be maintained this way, and it's just simply not the truth.
Well, Olayemi, we appreciate your perspective as always. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, y'all.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.